It is the Wisconsin Vegetable Garden Radio Show on 860 AM WNOV and W293CX 106.5. Wherever you may be listening, however you may be listening, whether through those particular stations, the TuneIn app, the Simple Radio app, the radio tab on the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com website, or anywhere in between. We are live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I am your host, Joey Barrett. Beside me is my wife, co-host, best friend, gardening partner,
Holly Baird.
The WisconsinVegetableGardener.com is your destination for all things gardening, with over 900 plus garden videos, short, long format, as well as the highlights of podcast replay and in-studio video of this particular show, as well as under the radio tab, you get full-length in-studio videos and podcast. So let's get into the main topic of today's program. Back, third show that we ever did here back in March. We did two segments on debunking common garden myths, and we thought that it was a time again to debunk more common garden myths that many people practice. And the reason why we debunk them is because if we continue to do a practice that has no scientific backing to it, what's the purpose of doing it? You're wasting time, energy, potentially money to do these practices that have no actual proof that they work. So we're going to go through part 3 here of debunking common garden myths, Holly. So what are some common garden? Let's just start with a couple of them here. What do we got?
So I like this one here where we talk about planting a new tree or shrub, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago
with Christy Willingham.
Right. You want to dig the hole and add an amendment to the soil before you backfill the hole. Is that true or false? That
is false. Now, if you are growing a tree in 100% clay soil, it's not a bad idea to supplement that backfill 50% compost, 50% native soil. But a lot of the soil, most of the soil we have, you just backfill it with the original soil. The reason being is if you take a tree, and let's say the tree is in a 1-foot pot, you want to dig a hole twice the size of that container. So now you've got a 2-foot diameter hole. You plant the tree, you backfill it with compost, and that tree, what that tree has done now is it's reaching its roots out. It finds that compost that you've put in there instead of the native soil, and it just grows in that compost. It continues to wrap roots around. It doesn't go out and explore. Well, this is the same for shrubs and bushes and all types of items like that. What you want to do is by filling it back with native soil, or at least a maximum of 50-50 native soil and compost, it's going to allow those roots to go out and explore into the native soil. In addition to that, it's going to have a good foundation. It's going to reach into that soil which you did not dig up, and it's going to be able to lock itself into the earth and prevent erosion, prevent the tree from topping over or uprooting if winds or strong winds come, because you've allowed it to grow in the native soil, not backfilled it with organic matter, highly nutrient-rich organic matter. So don't do that. That doesn't work. What's another one?
If a plant is under stress, it should be fed, and that is not necessarily true. A lot of times if a plant is under stress, it can be other outside factors. A lot
of times it's lack of water.
Right, a lot of times it's lack of water. Sometimes, or for the example with zucchini or squash, it could be something like the squash vine borer that's eating away at the inside of the plant.
But again, just because you see a plant that's in distress, don't put the fertilizer to it, because here's what's happening. Fertilizer is a mineral. Minerals contain salt. You put more fertilizer around the root of a plant that's already stressed, salt dehydrates plants or dehydrates people. So it can pull the moisture, what remaining moisture is inside that plant, out of the plant. And we're talking liquid form as well as granular form on that. So you want to essentially here just water the plant on a regular basis based on the requirements of that particular plant.
And if it's not the watering situation, then you need to look into what the problem could be.
Right. Just don't think, just pour the fertilizer to it, it'll be fine. That's not going to work 99.9% of the time. You've got to be vigilant on this and actually see what's going on. So just don't put the fertilizer to it, because you're wasting money. And like our dwarf lime tree, we see the leaves fall off occasionally. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. It's not because it's a lack of fertilizer. It's because lime trees or dwarf variety fruit trees, citrus trees, if they are lacking water, they will drop their leaves.
Right.
So if we would have just kept putting fertilizer to it, we would not have helped the problem at all. All right.
So let's talk about number 5. What's number 5, Joey?
When it comes to fertilizers and pesticides, if a little is good, twice is better.
Yeah, that's simply not true, and especially with any fertilizer or pesticide, but it's definitely not true.
Yeah, because
So the reason why is that your plant is only going to take up so much of what it needs, and you don't need to overfill. It's going to waste your money, and then on top of that, if it's a synthetic fertilizer, your plant can easily become very reliant on that fertilizer. And also,
and over fertilizing, like Christy Willingham, the garden geek, water molecules bond to the synthetic fertilizers.
right.
So that
And that can create problems into your soil. It can create problems into things like runoff, and it just becomes a problem. It's one small situation that can snowball into a much larger situation.
right. So be cautious of that. Let's see here. Organic pesticides are less toxic than synthetic ones. That's simply not the case. Here's the deal. Yes, they are. There's a standard in which farmers, gardeners follow. It's called OMRI, the Organic Material the Organic Institute, Research Institute, OMRI, on these bottles that indicate. Is that right?
It's the Organic Material Research Institute.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was. And it is deemed to be certified organic. But because if you don't follow the recommended rates on the back of these chemicals, pesticides, whatever it is, whether it's organic or not, it's not safe. You can overspray something and make the problem worse. So you want to follow the recommended rates. That's why instructions are on the back of these bottles. And just like ordinary household safe dish soap, if you use too much of that, it's considered toxic.
Right.
So just because it's labeled organic, yes, it's an organic practice, organic material in the recommended applicational rate that the back of the bottle or bag indicates. But overuse of that, it's just as toxic and deadly and bad for the environment and pets,
And
your kids,
we're
the whole
always
deal.
talking about building up your soil, and while we do use organic fertilizers and things like that in our garden, while it's helpful, building up your soil is what's going to be helpful in the long run.
Organic material of a safe manner, yes. So drought-tolerant plants do not need water. This is a very misconstrued statement. You know, you go to Blue Mel's, you buy these native plants that it says drought-tolerant plant. That doesn't mean you never have to water the thing.
No, and especially the first year.
But I can understand to a new gardener,
right? That makes sense.
Who's putting landscaping. Oh, I can put this in. I never have to water it because it's drought tolerant.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense why people would think that. But when you're putting that plant in, that plant is still young. It's still growing, and a lot of times that first year, it's going to need consistent watering.
Baby plants or seedlings.
It's also adapting to its new ecosystem.
Baby plants or seedlings or starts are very similar to children. As an adult, you can go a longer time without hydration than a 6-month-old baby.
3 days.
Well, I know, but you got to look at it in that sense.
Yeah. Your body has the ability to deal with things better than if you are younger.
Just like a plant, if a 4-year-old plant can handle the drought much better than a 6-week-old plant. So, I look at it that way.
And then even after that, after it's been established for a year or two, they still want water.
Oh, yes.
I mean, that's part of life. So if it's been dry, you should give them at least a monthly soaking. So let's talk about this one here. Vegetable gardens need sun all day long, and this is a very common myth. People will say, "Oh, I can't grow anything because my patio is in the shade.
I don't have a field."
I don't have a field. And yes, there are plants that want full sun, such as like tomatoes and peppers and squash, but there's also things that will take less sunlight. So the saying is that if you grow it for the fruit or the root, you want at least about 6 hours of sun.
Right,
more
full
is better.
sun means 6 hours.
Right, and
8 hours is better. 10 hours is great,
You're
but
cutting me off here.
you need 6 hours.
Right, and then if you grow it for the green, you can plant it in the shade. Well, not completely shade, but you can plant it in partial shade. So there are options for if you don't have full sun, you can certainly grow a lot still.
And we don't have the intense heat up here in Wisconsin as they do farther south. There's some places in the south and even central United States where some gardeners actually reduce the amount of sunlight that goes on their garden by using products called shade cloth. They build a canopy over top of their gardens to restrict the amount of light because there's so much light that is getting on the garden that it actually hurts some of the production of the plants in which they are growing. Berry banana peels to give roses a potassium boost.
So banana peels themselves, they can contain a higher level of potassium. However, it does take time to break down that peel and have that potassium released into the soil. So, and once it does break down, that would
it's robbing the soil.
It's robbing the soil of the nitrogen. It's a balance. Everything when life is a balance, everything in your soil is a balance. So you have to keep that in mind. So you could top dress with a compost instead.
Right. Now that banana peel is best to go in the compost pile.
Right.
Or just bury it somewhere else, not around a plant in which you're trying to grow. And people, you'll see on the internet, and take it for what it's worth, people will take old banana peels and let them soak or steep in water for 24 hours to try to extract some of that potassium and nutrients out of it. Just put it in the compost pile and let it break down naturally. That's the best way. If you want a potassium boost, find a fertilizer, either that's immediately available, water soluble, or it'll break down over 90 days to 4 months, that has a high potassium, which is that third number on the fertilizer bag. So we've got a lot. That's just some of what we have to debunk. So hopefully we hope that has helped you at least eliminate maybe some of the tasks in which you normally perform in your garden to save you more time. If you're in the Milwaukee or surrounding areas, just tune your radio to 860 AM or FM 106.5. You can also find links on our Facebook pages, The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener and Home Canning. Our website, thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com, click on the radio tab at the top of the page, then click on the Listen Live button, and you'll have immediately access to our live program. Mobile devices work very well also. Go to your app store and download for free the TuneIn app or the Simple Radio app. Then search WNOV 860, save it to your favorites, and you can have access to our radio show live wherever you're at in the world. Our radio program will also have podcast replay under the radio tab several days following the live broadcast. You can find all of these links in the show notes below. Our show airs 9 to 10 a.m. Central Standard Time every Saturday, March through the end of October. And we want to thank our sponsors because without them, this would not be anywhere possible. You can find all of their links under the radio tab on our website at thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.